Hi guys, it's Becky, and today I want to show you how to make this ornament using some craft wire. I made this one last year, and I actually sat down and made some with my sister when I was visiting at her house. So it's a really fun activity to do with other people because you can put any kind of beads you want on here as long as they fit on your wire, and then you have a little handmade ornament that you can hang from your tree. And so one of the things with this is forming the letters for this is a little bit easier if you have a wig jig or a wire jig, but I'm going to show you how to do it using just a piece of paper because you can do that with it. So we'll show that to you in just a minute. But first I wanted to show you what materials I'm going to be using. I am going to be using 18 gauge craft wire, and I'm just using some Softflex wire for this. And the reason I choose 18 gauge is because it'll hold its shape better. When you are choosing your beads that you're going to put on here, you're going to want to make sure that the beads you choose are going to fit on this because not every bead is going to fit on 18 gauge craft wire. Like these fit. Some of these smaller beads though, they do not fit on that. Their hole is just not large enough. So when you're planning this out, you want to make sure that the beads you're going to use are going to fit on there. So that's something that you're going to use on there. And I wanted to use some beads from, this is the Gingerbread Softflex design kit. And you'll notice I haven't used a lot of these beads yet. I used some of them to make a wire wrapped bangle, and it was really, really pretty. It turned out great. But I have a whole bunch of other beads that I'm going to be using for things. But for this ornament, I think going with the silver, I want silver and blues and whites to give me kind of a wintry vibe. So I'm going to pull out these light blue fire polish beads that came in this kit. And I'm just going to grab all of them out of here. And then I'm going to pull some of these kind of opaque white beads out of the other side. And I'm just going to do both of these for my beads that I have on my ornament. There's a bunch of other beads that I could be using instead or in addition to these, but I just want to use these. So these are the beads that I'm going to be using out of this kit. And so I just want to talk a little bit about why I chose this word. Number one, joy is universal. It is a fantastic feeling to witness, to share, to inspire, to feel, and it is, for me, a really big part of the holiday season. The joy that I feel with my family, the joy that I feel with my fellow men. It's just a really, really one of my favorite things about this time of year. And so that's one of the reasons that I chose it, but mostly I also chose it because it would fit really well in the circle. And there's only really one sharp bend that you have to make with it. The rest of it is just loops. So it makes it a little bit easier to do this as this kind of word. You could try doing it with other words like peace or love or something like that. But I thought joy just kind of fit for this. So that's the reason that I chose that. So let me get these beads out of the way, and I'm going to show you how to plan this so that it will work for you. I'm moving my bead board. I'm pulling out just a scrap piece of paper, and I'm going to grab a pencil real quick. It's just a mechanical pencil and something round, something that's about the size or shape that I want this to be, just to trace around. And let me see, I've got this. This will work. I'm just going to trace around this to make a circle. And the reason I'm using a pencil is so that if I make mistakes, I can erase it and start over. So now in my circle, I'm going to start planning my letter and how it goes. Now I started up here for the J. And I want to make sure that it's something that I'm going to be able to fit inside my circle, but also have a solid continuous line. And I think that's going to work for me. I kind of peeked over here to make sure that that's what I wanted it to be. It's going to be pretty similar with that. And there we go. So this is my Joy piece of paper that I'm going to be using. This is my template. I'm just going to fold it so it doesn't take up as much space. You don't have to fold it if you don't want to. I'm just doing it so that it's a little bit easier for me to handle. So now that I've got that drawn, I'm going to move my beadboard back. And I'm going to grab my wire. Now to use my, or to manipulate my wire, I'm going to be using some flush cutters for cutting. I'm going to be using some flat nose pliers for kind of tamping it down to help work harden it. But also I'm going to be using this to help make my bend in my Y. I am going to be using my 6-step bail making pliers for my loops when I make my ornament shape, and also when I make my hook at the end. I'm going to be using this for tucking in some ends and for additional, it's just a chain nose pliers. And then for shaping the loops on here, I'm going to look around and see what I have that are similar shapes and sizes. I'm going to use a pen for part of this, and I'm just going to grab this because I think about here it's wider than the pen but not as wide as this end, and I think that's where I'm going to form my O and this part of my Y, and I'll use the pen for these smaller loops. It's just something to help form the wire around so that it's round and not, you know, angled or anything like that. So I've got a marker, and then I've got part of this. And if you've got something that's tapered or something that's a little bit larger, it'll work great for you. Again, look around, see what you've got. You can use anything to form this around as long as it's round and a decent size for that. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull out some wire, and I've got about 8 or 9 inches of wire. I am just warming this up with my fingers, but also straightening it with my fingers as well to get some kinks and bends out of it. Because this is going to need to be formed into a circle. Where's my cutters? There they are. Now, rather than trying to bend it to fit this shape, I'm just going to grab that same circular shape that I traced around, and keep in mind that it will bounce out a little bit after you shape it. So I'm fine shaping it around the middle part of this. This inner part of this spool. And now that it's a round shape, I can fine tune the size a little bit, like that. All right, so where this meets at about that size, I'm going to go ahead and make a bend in this wire. I'm going to bend this up so that it's sitting straight up. See, it's a little bit larger than my thing right there. So this is going to necessarily have to come in a little bit more. But before I close it up, I'm going to string on my beads. So let's see. I'm going to have 1, 2, 3 on one side of the words, 1, 2, 3 on the other side of the words, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. They're just going to be alternating. And these ones down below. And then it looks like I've got a couple of leftovers that I can probably use for some earrings or for something else. So I'm just going to string these on in my order because I'm going to make my circle first. And then we will worry about where they get placed between the words. So like I'm going to have 3 up here on this side, 3 up here on this side, and then the rest of it will be this part down below. So this will be the part that's up here on that side. This will be the part that's down below. And having these two together is going to be great for me to remember where to wrap my wires when I attach my words. Because I am going to be wrapping my words or turning my words into words first, and then we'll wrap it onto our circle. So this is our frame, and then we'll do our wires. And I just want to get my beads onto my frame before I close it up. Because once I close it up, it's going to be a little bit harder. Not impossible. You can always wire wrap it onto there by wrapping around the outside edges. And that's also a great thing to do. If your beads won't fit on your wire, you could use a smaller gauge wire and just wrap it around your bead frame. Again, this is a fun activity to do with other folks. If you wanted to have little handmade ornaments that everybody gets to make and put on your tree. I don't know what kind of traditions you guys usually do for that, but we have always had handmade ornaments on our tree when I was growing up. In fact, we would very often make our ornaments, and those would be our ornaments for the year. And then my mom would keep them all separated. So we each had our ornaments, and they were, she'd pull them out when it's time to decorate the tree. And then we put them all back at the end of the season. And when we moved out on our own, she gave us that little bag with all of our ornaments so that we could use them on our own trees. So this is where it meets. So I'm going to make a bend here. I'm going to bend it this way so that my little circle can get a loop. I'm pinching this top one. I have my other finger back here. I'm going to pinch these together like that. Now, I don't want this circle to get any smaller. So, while I am wire wrapping, I'm going to hold both ends of my wire with this. Because sometimes when you're wrapping along like this, it will, instead of using this wire, it will pull on this wire and it will make your circle smaller, or it will deform it. It will misshape it. So I've got my 3 wraps up here on this side. Scooch that down a little bit. I still have my nice round wire frame. And you could just have this as an ornament with some beads on it. I think it's really pretty looking, just like this. But I'm going to add some joy. I love adding joy to everything. All right, so now I've got this. I'm going to make myself a little loop up here at the top that I can attach my hook to when I want to hang it from the tree. So I'm just going to make a little loop up here, right here, by bending this over here. And this will also keep this from sliding up by bending this over, so it will retain its circular shape. And this is the part, well, part of the part that I'm going to use my 6-step veil making pliers with. And I don't know that I need a really large loop for this. So I'm just going to go the 3rd step up. So you've got your 1, 2, 3. Pull this around. You know what? This is 18 gauge, so I can just do a simple loop. I did not leave myself enough room to do a wrapped loop, and that is fine because this isn't going to be a super heavy guy. And a simple loop should hold it just fine. To make sure that this stays in loop shape, I'm just going to tamp this part down with my flat nose pliers just to work hard in that. And now I've got my frame. My frame is going to have some joy in it pretty soon. All right, so for my joy, I'm going to go ahead and pull off probably a lot more wire than I need just to be on the safe side. I'm going to pull about 15 inches of wire off of here. This is 15 inches wide, my bead board. So that's what I'm using for measuring it. And I'm off screen because I am warming this up. It's flying around though, like kind of waving around while I'm doing it, and I don't want it to hit the camera. All right, so warming that up. Let's cut this guy off. And I want to leave myself a good like 3 inches or so for wrapping before I start making my letters. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and bend right there. Let's make a sharper bend actually, because this is going to be the wire that I use for wrapping around this. All right, and now I'm just going to follow this and make sure that this goes all the way around here. So the first part here is I need to make a loop. So I'm going to use my marker right here. And this isn't going to be as awkward for you because you could probably do it like without having to avoid being on the camera. So that's where that's going to be. I'm going to hold this here. And there we go. That's about a good place for it to cross. Let's see how that fits. It fits pretty well. All right, now I want this to curve this way. So I'm going to use my thumb for that. And I'm just going to curve around there. So now I've got this part that I want to curve all the way around on. So this is where I'm going to hold my awl. I'm going to bend this all the way around. Get it all. If I want to make it bigger, I'm going to slide this up a little bit to make my O just a little bit bigger. All right. And you can move it and bend it if it's not quite lining up. All right. Got this on my finger, and I'm just going to bend it this way around on my finger. feel like I had a little more control over that. I'm using my thumb just to kind of bend this down a little bit. So I've got my O, my J, O, and now I need to make my Y. So my Y is also going to be bent around my awl. Move this up a little bit. There we go. So it mostly fits. If it doesn't fit completely, that's fine, as long as it still looks like joy to you. Give myself a little bit of a sharper bend here between the O and my Y. Like that. And right here is where I'm going to want to make another sharp bend. So I'm going to take my flat nose pliers. I'm going to bend this all the way down here. I'm pinching this, and I'm just going to real gently, kind of squish this a little bit flatter. Whoop. And it twisted. You can twist it back. That gives me a nice sharp bend in my Y. And I would like to bend that up there a little bit more so it fits better with what I've drawn. And I'm going to do another loop down here with my wire using my marker, pressing my wire, holding my marker, and looping this around. This is why a wire jig is a little bit easier, but you can still do it without one. And you can adjust this any way you want so it fits better, or it fits your handwriting. All right, so now I have my letters formed, and I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to attach it to my wireframe. I'm going to start over here on this side. I'm going to do this by holding this here and using this to kind of clamp both of these into place. Or maybe I'll just use my fingers. One, two, three. Whoop. It's a little too close. I'm just trying to do it so you guys can see it without it getting out of the way. All right, so now I've got my J attached over here. And now I need to attach my Y on the other side. So if I've got my Y here, I've got my top beads moved out of the way. Make sure your top beads are where you want them to be. This one's going to be a little bit trickier because I have to move around my letters in order to get this wrapped around. So I am definitely going to need to tidy my wraps when I am done. That is going to be enough wrapping for me. All right, so to tidy my wraps, I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers right here. See, my wraps are real loose. Just going to squish them down together, and then I'm going to give it a little twist, just to tidy them up. And that's how you make a joy ornament. Now let's make a hook, because you can either grab some twine or something and hang it using that. That's one way to hang it on your tree, with some twine. Or you can make yourself a little tree hook. You may already have tree hooks. That is fine. But I'm going to grab my, again, 18 gauge wire. And it turns out that 15 inches was exactly enough for this. I did not have that much excess. And you can fiddle with it as much as you want to get it to sit right and to lay right. All right, so for a wire hook, I'm just going to go ahead and pull off about 6 or 7 inches for this. And here on the end, I'm going to make a spiral first. And for spirals, I'm going to start at the very, very tip. I'm going to use some round nose pliers for this. I'm just going to go around my spiral because it's fancy. And then once it gets to a certain point where you would be grasping 2 wires and smushing them together, this is when you would switch to like your flat nose pliers or chain nose pliers to hold your spiral while you move your wire around it. You can make your spiral as big or as little as you want. Makes it kind of festive. All right, so now that I've got my spiral, I'm going to want to make a hook and a loop that is big enough to go around the tray. And you know what? Instead of, I could use this for that, but I think I'm just going to keep using my pen. I think a little loop about 1.5 inches away from the edge is going to be perfect for me. You just form that. You're going to want it to be kind of long so that it fits around the tree branches. And then down here at the bottom, I'm just going to make a simple loop. I'm going to actually move down a little bit so that we have more room on here. And my simple loop, I'm going to go ahead and use this one. You can change the orientation of your hooks any way that you want when you use this, but now I can attach my hook to my ornament and I am ready to decorate a Christmas tree. So this is the one that I just made using the gingerbread kit. This is one I made last year. And I hope that all of you get to experience some joy this season. Have a great day. Bye.